The sands of Kemet burned red under Ra's watchful eye. Not from the sun's heat, but from the bodies of the fallen Egyptians and invaders alike. The war was not between men. It was between gods. At least, that was what the scribes would later write. They would not call them what they truly were, because no one would believe that aliens had ruled over the kingdom of the Nile. Except the pharaoh. Pharaoh Menkaure knelt in the heart of the ruined temple, blood smeared across his bronze chestplate. His royal guard lay dead around him, their weapons shattered, their bodies frozen in grotesque stillness, paralyzed by the invaders' strange technology. The colossal statue of Osiris behind him was cracked, its stone eyes glowing with eerie, unnatural light. The invaders had come. Menkaure stared at them. Jackal-headed figures taller than men, wrapped in metallic cloth that shimmered like liquid stars. Their eyes were cold, pitiless, and filled with the unshakable certainty of conquest. They had ruled the skies before humans even built the first mud-brick hut. To them, Egypt was not a civilization. It was livestock. And livestock did not rise against their keepers. Yet here he stood, a man among gods, gripping a blade chipped from the staff of Thoth, a relic of stolen knowledge, scavenged from the ruins of something buried beneath the Sphinx. The leader of the invaders, Khobatet, the Forgotten One, stepped forward. His voice, modulated and inhuman, crackled like the sound of breaking papyrus. "This world belongs to us." Menkaure spat blood onto the ground. "Not anymore." Khobatet extended his hand. From his palm, a golden ankh ignited, pulsing with raw energy. A weapon. Sentence. God's decree. The pharaoh did not hesitate. He charged. The scribes of Egypt had always believed their writing was divine, that the hieroglyphs held magic, that the symbols were power. They were only half wrong. The truth was far older and far more terrifying. Long before Egypt, before even the first humans stood upright, an ancient war raged between the sky-dwelling Neferu and the outcast Uarka. The Neferu had ruled Earth in secret, shaping the destiny of mankind, whispering through priests and bloodlines. But the Uarka, the ones who had fallen, had always hated humanity. And now they had returned. The hieroglyphs, the sacred carvings that had defined Egypt's empire, were more than just words. They were coordinates, summoning codes, keys to unlocking forbidden technology buried beneath the pyramids, machines left behind by the Neferu when they abandoned Earth. Khobatet had discovered the final sequence. And the moment he activated the last glyph, a tremor shook the Great Pyramid. The hidden chamber deep beneath it split open. Something awoke. Something older than both men and gods. Menkaure had been raised to worship the gods. Now he understood the truth. They were not gods. They were enemies. And Egypt humanity had been nothing but their cattle. But cattle did not build pyramids. Cattle did not carve the names of the dead into stone so they would be remembered for eternity. Cattle did not fight back. And so, with bloodied hands, a shattered blade, and a heart filled with rage, the last true pharaoh of Kemet stood against the jackal-headed overlords who thought themselves eternal. The stolen technology buried beneath the Sphinx hummed to life. A weapon designed for a war long forgotten. Menkaure spoke the final command. The stars above Egypt burned. The ground beneath Menkaure cracked like dry bone. A deep hum resonated from beneath the sands, rattling the broken temple walls. The Great Sphinx, long thought to be a guardian, was stirring. It had never been a simple monument. It was a weapon. Khobatet's jackal-like face twitched. He stepped back, raising his ankh weapon. The rest of the Uarka invaders hissed in their strange, garbled tongue. They knew what this meant. The Neferu had left behind a failsafe. And somehow, this primitive human had activated it. Menkaure stood tall, feeling the pulse of energy rippling from the hidden chamber beneath the Sphinx. He had no idea what lay beneath, no idea if it would even recognize him as an ally. But he did not care. He would rather burn with Egypt than kneel to these parasites. The sand in front of him collapsed inward, revealing a glowing chasm of swirling blue light. Strange, alien hieroglyphs lined the walls, shifting, changing as if alive. And at the center of it all, half buried in the rock, was a throne made of obsidian and gold. Menkaure understood immediately. This was not a throne. It was a cockpit. The Sphinx was never a statue. It was a battle engine, built by the Neferu in a time before memory, a final stand against their rebellious kin who had sought to enslave humanity. But the Neferu had failed. They had fled, leaving their masterpiece buried beneath the sands, never activated. Till now. Menkaure climbed the steps, every nerve in his body screaming. The air inside the cockpit was thick with something old, something not meant for humans. Yet as he lowered himself into the throne, he felt it. The machine knew him. It recognized his blood. The moment his back touched the ancient seat, the walls came alive. Glowing energy surged through the structure of the Sphinx. The ground shook violently. Outside, the jackal-headed invaders panicked. They had always feared this. The awakening of the Sphinx meant war. The sands of Giza split open. The Great Sphinx moved. Stone and metal groaned as it rose from the desert floor, shaking off millennia of dust. Its once calm, carved face split apart, revealing something underneath, a gleaming golden war mask, shaped like a roaring lion. The Urka opened fire. Their weapons struck the Sphinx's massive frame, blinding light, energy blasts, enough to turn 100 men into nothing but dust. The Sphinx did not even flinch. Menkaure felt it now, the rage of humanity's forgotten gods. A system buried in his mind, a language not spoken for thousands of years, whispered into his thoughts. He could see the jackal-headed aliens through his own eyes and the machines at the same time. They were afraid. He raised his right arm and the Sphinx mimicked the motion. A massive, golden staff extended from its side, crackling with energy. Hieroglyphs burned across its surface, shifting into something new, something no scribe had ever written. A single command echoed through time itself. Destroy the false gods. The Sphinx struck. A shockwave of ancient power erupted from its staff, racing through the desert like a storm of pure fire. The Urka invaders, beings who had ruled from the shadows for centuries, vanished in an instant. Their forms were ripped apart, their armor shattered into 1,000 burning fragments. Kobatet was the last to fall. His golden ankh weapon melted in his hands, his alien bones crumbling to dust. As he disintegrated, his last words were not of rage nor defiance, only terror. The Neferu will return. The battlefield was silent. Menkaure stood within the heart of the Sphinx, his hands trembling. The machine was alive. Not just a weapon but a guardian. It had recognized him. And in doing so, it had awakened a war that had never truly ended. The Neferu had left Earth but not forever. And the Urka had tried to reclaim it. Now, humanity had proven something impossible. They would not bow. And soon the sky gods would hear what happened here today. Menkaure exhaled. He looked up at the heavens. And waited. For the first time in centuries, the Great Sphinx stood tall, no longer a slumbering monument but a war engine ready for battle. Menkaure felt its ancient power thrumming beneath his fingers, his own heartbeat syncing with something older than humanity itself. But as the dust settled over Giza, he knew. This was only the beginning. The Urka were dead. Their conquest of Earth had ended before it began. But the dying words of Kobatet echoed in his mind. The Neferu will return. The sky gods had left Earth long ago. Now they would come back because something had changed. Humanity had awakened. Deep beneath Abydos, the oldest temple in Egypt, the high priests had gathered in secret. They had felt the moment the Sphinx had risen. The scribes whispered nervously in the candlelight, their hands trembling as they traced the hieroglyphs on the temple walls. Symbols that should have remained dormant were now shifting, realigning themselves as if rewriting fate. The oldest priest, Anenhet, stepped forward. His voice, though frail with age, carried the weight of prophecy. Has begun. The others gasped. For centuries, the priests of Abydos had guarded a terrible secret, one that even the pharaoh did not know. Beneath their temple, Hidden in a crypt that had never been opened, lay an artifact of the Neferu. Star map. A warning. And as they watched, the ancient stone carvings came to life, glowing with blue-white energy. The map was no longer still. It was moving. Something was coming. Menkaure had little time to prepare. The people of Memphis, Thebes, and Karnak had seen the battle against the Urka. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some called him a god, some a madman. But none of it mattered. Because 3 days after the battle, the sky split apart. A hole in the fabric of the heavens ripped open above the pyramids, revealing a city of silver and light, suspended in the void. A structure so vast it could block out the moon, hovering above the earth like a silent judgment. The Neferu had returned. Menkaure stood atop the Sphinx, watching their arrival. The battle machine hummed beneath him, eager, hungry. But the Neferu were not like the Urka. They did not come as jackal-headed warlords. They came as golden beings, tall and elegant, their forms wrapped in shimmering energy armor, their eyes glowing with knowledge beyond human comprehension. Their leader descended from the sky on a floating throne, staring down at the pharaoh with something like curiosity. Her voice was not spoken but heard in the mind. You were never meant to awaken the lion. Menkaure gripped the controls of the Sphinx. You abandoned us. The Neferu leader tilted her head. And yet you survived. Oz. Perhaps we were wrong about you. Behind her, the other Neferu moved, shifting, preparing. Not for war. For judgment. Humanity had chosen to fight back. Now the gods had returned to decide their fate. The Neferu descended from the sky like phantoms of old. They did not march in lines like the Urka. They did not roar, did not threaten. They simply arrived. Their golden ships hovered over Egypt, smooth and silent, shaped like the eye of Ra, watching, waiting. Menkaure stood atop the Great Sphinx, the war engine still humming with ancient energy. His hands clenched into fists. He could feel it. The Neferu did not respect humanity. They were here to test them. And if they found Menkaure unworthy, they would erase Egypt from history. A golden figure descended, stepping onto the sands of Giza. She was taller than any human, her body wrapped in liquid metal robes, shifting as she moved. Her face was impossibly perfect, her eyes glowing like twin suns. She spoke not in words but in thoughts that burned. You are not ready. Menkaure did not answer. He simply raised his blade. The Neferu warrior tilted her head. Mused. She extended her hand. A staff of golden energy materialized, crackling with light from a dying star. And then, she struck. Menkaure barely dodged. The sand where he stood turned to glass, heat surging in every direction. The impact shook the Sphinx itself. The Neferu were fast. Too fast. Menkaure lunged, activating the war engine. The Sphinx mimicked his motion, swinging its massive golden staff. But the Neferu vanished before the strike could land. Flash. A pulse of pure energy slammed into the Sphinx's chest, forcing Menkaure to his knees. The Neferu warrior reappeared, hovering above the battlefield. You were never meant to challenge us. Menkaure coughed blood. He smiled. Then why are you afraid? The Neferu attacked without mercy. From their hovering city, beams of pure energy rained down upon the Nile, vaporizing entire districts of Memphis. Temples collapsed. Walls crumbled. And yet, Egypt did not kneel. Menkaure activated the full power of the Sphinx's hidden weapons, revealing arcane hieroglyphic glyphs long buried beneath the stone. They were not just symbols. They were commands. The Sphinx roared, a deafening metallic sound that echoed across the desert. Its golden staff split into 4, forming massive, rotating blades of pure energy. Menkaure swung, and a Neferu warship exploded in midair. The Neferu flinched. They had not expected resistance. The humans were fighting back. The Sphinx launched into the air, its ancient propulsion tearing the sands apart. It clashed against Neferu war machines, golden against gold, a forgotten relic against the gods who made it. Menkaure did not fight like a king. He fought like a man who had nothing left to lose. And the Neferu, for the first time in millennia, hesitated. They had ruled the stars. They had shaped humanity. And yet, here was a mere mortal, piloting a forgotten war machine, destroying their ships, defying their power. This was not how the gods' return was meant to go. The Neferu leader hovered above the battlefield, watching as more of her kind fell. The Sphinx, thought to be nothing more than a monument, was slaughtering them. Menkaure stood atop it, eyes burning with fury. He was not stopping. And in that moment, the Neferu finally understood. Humanity was not their creation. Humanity was their replacement. The Neferu were immortal, but they were stagnant. They had believed themselves to be gods, untouchable, unchallenged. Yet here was a species that had never accepted its fate. A species that built monuments for eternity. A species that defied gods. The leader's thoughts rippled through the Neferu fleet. Withdraw. Her soldiers turned in shock. We must leave this world. More explosions. More of their ships falling like dying stars. They had miscalculated. They had underestimated humanity. They were not gods anymore. And now they were afraid. The sky tore apart once more. This time not as an invasion, but as a retreat. The Neferu ships fled, their great floating city rising back into the void. They had lost their right to rule. And as the last of them vanished into the abyss, Menkaure looked up, his hands still clenched into fists. They would return one day. They would try again. But when they did, humanity would be waiting. Stronger, smarter, deadlier. Because humans did not worship gods. They replaced them. The Neferu leader hovered above the battlefield, her golden form shimmering in the dying light of the sun. Her expression was unreadable, but her presence alone sent a ripple of unease through the air. She raised one elegant hand, and the very sky trembled. Behind her, the floating city loomed, casting an unnatural shadow over the pyramids. From its depths, dozens of Neferu warriors descended, beings of pure energy and light, wrapped in shimmering golden armor. They were no longer watching. They were here to judge. The word was not spoken. It was simply placed in Menkaure's mind, heavy with the weight of absolute authority. Menkaure stood his ground. His fingers curled into fists, the sand shifting beneath his feet. The Sphinx, now fully awakened, hummed with ancient power behind him, its golden war mask glowing like a star on earth. We bow to no one. The Neferu leader's head tilted slightly, as if considering something unspoken. Then, with a single motion, she raised her hand. A pillar of golden fire erupted from the sky, striking the sand mere feet from Menkaure. The blast sent a shockwave through the ruins, flattening stone, melting rock to glass. The message was clear. This was not a war. It was an execution. The Neferu warriors moved as one, their bodies flickering in and out of reality. They surrounded Menkaure, circling him like lions around prey. Each one carried a weapon of light, curved blades of pure energy, crackling with the force of a dying star. Menkaure gritted his teeth. He was outnumbered. Facing gods with nothing but blood and steel. And yet, he smiled. Because the Neferu had made a mistake. They believed they were fighting a man. They did not realize they were fighting humanity. The Sphinx moved. With a deafening roar, the ancient war engine leapt forward, its golden staff splitting into 4 massive spinning blades. A wave of energy tore through the sand, carving a deep trench through the battlefield. The Neferu hesitated, just for a moment, but that was enough. Menkaure moved. He swung his stolen blade, a weapon crafted from Neferu technology, reforged by human hands. The nearest warrior barely had time to react before the blade sliced through their golden form, splitting them in half. The air shuddered with a terrible sound. For the first time in countless millennia, a god had fallen. The Neferu did not scream. They simply stopped. For an eternity they had ruled without opposition. No mortal had ever dared defy them, let alone strike them down. Menkaure saw the flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. And that was all he needed. He pressed forward, the Sphinx matching his fury. The war machine lunged, slamming a Neferu warrior into the sand, its energy blades cutting through divine flesh as if it were nothing. Another fell. Then another. Then the sky burned. The Neferu city, still hovering above Egypt, tilted slightly. Its underside shifted, revealing a massive structure buried beneath its golden exterior. It was not a city. It was a weapon. A vast mechanism, its surface lined with countless hieroglyphs, symbols that began to glow, shifting in patterns no human could read. The air grew heavy. The stars above seemed to dim. Then the sky cracked open. A beam of golden energy erupted from the Neferu city, a force unlike anything seen before. It did not explode. It did not burn. Simply erased. The sand beneath it ceased to exist. The ruins of Memphis, once a city of 1,000 years, were wiped away in an instant. The Neferu had decided. If humanity refused to submit, then humanity would be purged. Menkaure shielded his eyes as the world tore apart. The power of the gods had returned, and it would not stop until nothing remained. But deep within the cockpit of the Sphinx, a new series of hieroglyphs began to glow, symbols untouched for millennia, now awakening to a single truth. The Neferu were not the only ones who had left something behind. And as the energy of the false gods tore through the heavens, something beneath Giza stirred. Beneath the pyramids, deep within the sands of Kemet, ancient gears began to turn. The Neferu had long believed that only they had left technology behind. They were wrong. Something else had once walked this world. Something older. Something that had been watching. The Neferu's warship shifted above, preparing to fire again. But then the earth itself roared. The sands of Giza split apart, revealing a vast structure beneath. The ground fell away, revealing an enormous ring, 10 times the size of the Great Pyramid, humming with an energy unseen for 1,000 years. And then, it activated. A pulse of blue-white light surged through the battlefield, slamming into the Neferu warriors. Their bodies flickered, their golden energy corrupting, distorting. The Sphinx turned. Its war mask, once frozen in stone, shifted, revealing something beneath the carved exterior. A face not of man nor god, but something else entirely. Something that had waited. Something that had been left behind. Menkaure heard it. A voice not human, not divine, but something in between. The cycle ends. Above, the Neferu warship trembled. Its golden light flickered. For the first time in its immortal existence, it was afraid. The ground beneath the Great Pyramids shook like a dying beast. The sky, once a vast golden dome of Neferu power, was cracking. The floating city above Egypt flickered as if something had disturbed its very foundation. Not a weapon, not defiance. Something ancient. Menkaure stood atop the awakened Sphinx, its glowing war mask reflecting the chaos around him. He could feel it now, the hum of something older than gods, deeper than history. The glyphs inside the Sphinx's cockpit burned with a power he did not understand. Yet it was his to wield. And he would wield it against the heavens themselves. Beneath the sands, the Lion's Gate, a colossal ring of hieroglyph-carved metal, hidden for eons, had fully awakened. Lightning-like energy surged through its symbols, each one flashing in a rhythm, forming a language never spoken aloud. But Menkaure understood. This was not a gate built by the Neferu. This was a warning left behind by something greater. Something that had fought the Neferu before. And as the symbols completed their cycle, the ring ignited. A swirling vortex of energy erupted from its center, a tunnel of blinding blue-white light, stretching into the unknown. Portal. To where? Menkaure didn't know. But he had no time to think. The Neferu warships realigned, their golden hulls glowing with divine fire, preparing one last purge. If they could not reclaim humanity, they would erase them from history. The voice of the Neferu leader echoed across the battlefield. You do not understand what you have awakened, Pharaoh. Her voice was calm, cold. The war you call upon will not end with us. Menkaure's grip tightened. Then let it begin. The first blast came without warning. A Neferu warship fired directly at the Sphinx, a beam of golden light meant to reduce it to dust. The impact struck dead center, blinding, consuming, enough to turn entire cities into nothing. But when the light faded, the Sphinx still stood. And it was changing. The ancient stone exterior peeled away, revealing an inner core of obsidian and metal, lined with glowing hieroglyphs never seen before. It was not just a machine. It was a vessel, and Menkaure was now its pilot. His vision blurred as the machine's knowledge poured into him. The way to move, the way to fight, the way to command the skies. It had been waiting for him. Waiting for the moment humanity proved itself worthy. The Neferu warship fired again. This time the Sphinx moved. It vanished in an instant, faster than any mortal eye could follow, reappearing above the Neferu fleet, its golden war mask now glowing like a burning star. Menkaure raised his hand. The Sphinx mimicked his motion. And then it struck. A blast of pure energy, shaped like a divine ankh, tore through the heavens. It ripped through the Neferu warship's core, shattering its hull, sending it plummeting from the sky in flames. The Neferu were silent. They had not known fear for 1,000 years. But now, they were witnessing the rebirth of something they had long forgotten. A human piloting the weapon of an older war. A human defying the gods. The floating city above Earth, the last true stronghold of the Neferu, began to break apart. The Lion's Gate was still active. Its energies were pulling at the sky, distorting reality itself. The air twisted, space fractured like something else was trying to come through. The Neferu leader watched in silence. She had led thousands of conquests, seen the fall of entire civilizations. And yet she knew now this was different. The Neferu had believed humanity would never rise beyond servitude. They had been wrong. Menkaure stood atop the Sphinx, his eyes burning with fury. He raised his arm again, this time not in war, but in judgment. Leave. His voice echoed across the battlefield. The Neferu leader hesitated. And then, for the first time in their history, the gods turned and fled. The remaining warships vanished into the void, their retreat swift, silent, absolute. The floating city above Earth tilted, cracked, and collapsed. The war was over, and humanity had won. Menkaure stepped down from the cockpit of the Sphinx. The machine, having served its purpose, fell silent once more. The Lion's Gate was still open, swirling with unknown energy. And then, something moved beyond it. Menkaure felt it before he saw it. Presence. A force that had been watching. It did not speak. Did not move. But it was there. The Neferu had fled. Not from humanity, but from what lay beyond the gate. Menkaure clenched his fist. The war was not over. It had only just begun. And now he would lead humanity into the unknown. Because mankind was not meant to kneel. Mankind was meant to conquer.